All right. There's been a bit of a situation, and it kind of brought to mind something I've been thinking of lately in regards to the whole Epstein files debacle, as it's quickly becoming. Your two main bipartisan senators who've been pushing for this stuff, Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, decided they were going to unmask all the powerful rich men who were still redacted in the Epstein files, and they mentioned a bunch of names, and it turns out 2/3 of them were guys from an FBI lineup. You know, like you see in the TV shows and the movies where they got like 6 guys, they bring in, the victim and they say, which one of these men here did it? That sort of thing. Yeah, just 4 random guys off the street who now apparently have procured lawyers to represent themselves. Not sure how much help it's going to do, because members of Congress, when they're speaking on the congressional floor, have an unusual amount of latitude to say stuff that would get you charged with defamation under normal circumstances. But still, one of the things that a lot of people lack is imagination. They get latched onto an idea and they just start looping on it. And when they do that, they give up the ability to perceive of any other possible explanations. It's like when somebody cuts you off in traffic and it's obviously because that guy's just a jerk, right? There could be no other possible explanation. He's not running late for work. He's not merging soon, exiting soon, so he has to merge. He's not just kind of sleepy because he has to work at 5 in the morning or something. He can't be like late for his daughter's piano recital. It has to be that he's a jerk, right? And this is something I do quite often in situations like that. I try to see it from the other person's perspective and go, well, why maybe did they make that decision, despite the fact that it was a less optimal decision, not very charitable, shall we say, to my position. And it's like, well, it's not always because people are being jerks. It might just be because there are extenuating circumstances that I don't know about. Similarly, when it comes to the Epstein files, you notice that during the 2020 campaign, Trump was pushing very hard for them, to be released, promising to release them if he got elected. And then he did a really strange 180, like a couple of months in. And a lot of people immediately latched on the idea that he must be implicated in something untoward in the files. Because what other possible explanation could there be? Because Trump is an egotist who only cares about himself, yada, yada, yada. Trump, from my read of the man, poses as an egotist, if you will. He actually very much cares about how other people see him rather than just how he physically is, and he's unusually charitable in a lot of various circumstances that have arisen over the years, paying for people's this, that, and the other, and often not wanting to be having it reported in the news. So it's not simply that he's an egotist who, cynically used it in order to get elected and then wanted to bury it after he's no longer elected. Alright, he's rotted. So when I saw him do that, I figured it wasn't that he was doing something where he just thought, oh, these will absolutely never get out. No one will have to know that I just used it as a means of getting elected, yada, yada. I think it's more likely that what happened is that upon taking a closer look at what's in the files, he had second givings because he realized what sort of second and third order effects that might have. For example, what's the one thing he said at the very offset was that there were innocent people unfortunate. Host didn't have any hit points. Wish I'd been paying a little bit more attention. But at least we got past the malformed guy. Anyway, we've now seen this, firsthand with these 4 guys effectively getting slandered because it was assumed that any redacted name that doesn't look like it might be a woman's name has to be someone who's criminally implicated, and that's just not true, right? Other possible explanations that could come up: someone completely unexpected that Trump was connected to gets implicated in the files. For example, Steve Bannon. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, but Steve Bannon was pretty instrumental in getting Trump elected the first time. And he was given a pretty high advisory position in the initial White House. But then he just started leaking all over the place and became a drunken slob, so Trump booted him out. He's kind of been weaseling his way back in since then. But it turns out that, unbeknownst to just about everyone, Bannon was chatting with Epstein behind the scenes and effectively trying to rehabilitate the man's image. That's a little wild. That's a weird thing to do. And as far as I can tell, Trump really hasn't been speaking good of Bannon ever since, 2017. Meanwhile, Bannon has been, at least on the surface, pulling for Trump ever since he got sober again, despite the fact that he was still corresponding and even interviewing Epstein at the time, which is a really weird thing to do. But on the other hand, you'd think that'd be a pretty potentially damning implication of Trump's first term, but none of the usual suspects are talking about him. No Massey, no Ro Khanna, no major Democratic or dissident Republican political figure of any real size has said boo about it. So that's a little weird. There is what's his name, Howard Lutnick, who it turns out was a little more attached to Epstein than he let on. And I've seen people calling for his resignation and whatnot, but they also aren't asking for Stacey Plunkett, who's the representative for the Virgin Islands, who is also very, very chummy with Epstein, to the point they were texting back and forth, and he was giving her instructions during Trump's former lawyer Cohen's congressional hearing. Ain't nobody asking for her to get punished. In fact, I believe that Massey actually voted against censoring her. You also don't see anyone asking for Reid Hoffman to get, thrown to the wolves. Funny that. But then there's another, I believe it was Anna Paulina, I believe her name is, another representative, brought up a very good point that even I hadn't considered. What if some of the names of rich, powerful men who were gleefully participating in all this business with Epstein are in fact themselves his former victims? Because Stockholm Syndrome is a thing. Some people, when abused, will react to it counterintuitively by getting really into it. And if you're the kind of person who's trying to recruit a bunch of wannabe models and actresses for your various very nefarious doings, those kinds of people are probably going to be mostly friends with other people similar to them. So if you can get one of them to think, you're their friend, you could very easily use one of your, I shouldn't say former victims, really just one of your victims as an accomplice. Okay, we just double tap that guy. Let's see if he comes back with half as much health as normal. So there's a distinct chance that if we just start unredacting all those names that are currently redacted, it might come back as a bunch of women who are currently, like, parading around in front of various hearings and being like, why won't you name our abusers? It's like, well, at this point, why don't you? Massey can say it. Hell, you could just file a police report if any of you are from New York, or file a civil suit. Same thing that Eugene Carroll did with Trump. Get, almost $100 million. I mean, why not? It's kind of weird that they don't. A very good possibility that I haven't seen anyone suggest, even on top of all that, is that the former victims may themselves want guarantees of immunity so they can testify against other people, but they need to know that there's an actual court case coming first. Alright, phase 3. Yeah, we'll let you get it. I'm going to heal your ass. The trick there is that the bursts of light are delayed just a little bit after the big flash. Worth it. Oh, I'm going to take that hit. Was that the host? Damn it. And then we just beat it. Go figure. Oh well. Not my fault. There's something I like to do in this game, and just kind of in life in general. If I ever find myself getting stuck somewhere doing something, just repeating the same act, over and over again, expecting it to work again, trying to beat that boss, using that weapon with that strategy, I'll just stop, look down, and say, I'm a human being with free will. And then try something different. And if that doesn't work, I can try something different again. Some people, they just start getting looping. They don't have the imagination necessary to fix that pattern in themselves. And heck, sometimes even I forget to do it, so I'm not faultless. This is especially bad, though, just from a political perspective, because if you look at the typical mental framework of left versus right, leftists literally have more mental illness, including depression. And basically the entire definition of depression is that your brain is getting stuck into a doom loop. It's called rumination, actually, when you just keep thinking of all the negative possible outcomes of everything and how everything's bad, and this leads to that, which leads back to this being bad, and you can't get your mind out of that loop. And that's what happens when you have a lot of people who might be creative but aren't particularly imaginative have some measure of political power and influence. Oh, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt, buddy. You get healed. Heal your ass. Heal your ass. I'll hold him back. Try getting close, buddy. And see ya. Red Bear down. Good job, mate. Anyway, yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. One of the great things about conspiracy theories is that they kind of highlight this problem. You get someone who, for whatever reason, hyper focuses on the idea that, you know, the earth is flat or whatever, and every contravening bit of evidence, they have to at least get imaginative to think of ways that it might not be true, and then you're going to have to knock all those things down. But if someone gets imaginative and figures out ways to explain what is observable, what is, as far as we know, true, and the only and your only counter argument is nuh-uh, that means you should at least investigate it. Doesn't mean you're right, just means you might want to take a closer look. So I think I will leave it at that. So remember, trust but verify.